My name is Delilah Phillips. I'm 34. I'm a construction engineer living in Phoenix with my boyfriend Nathan and my son Grayson. What I'm about to tell you happened last summer, and it cracked my family in half. Even now, more than a year later, my body reacts when I think about it. Heart racing, palms sweating, a heavy pressure in my chest like something is still sitting there, refusing to move. Grayson was 9 then, bright, sweet, the kind of kid who makes friends in 5 minutes because he smiles like he means it. Nathan, my steady place, was 32, calm, careful, the kind of man who listens before he speaks and speaks like he's trying not to hurt anyone. And my father, Horace, was 64. In Flagstaff, he was still treated like a legend, the Iron Man, the town's pride, the kind of person people trusted automatically just because he'd spent decades wearing a badge. My older sister, Daria, 36, followed him into law enforcement. Patrol officer in Flagstaff. Same posture, same controlled voice, same belief that discipline fixes everything. And then there was Daria's daughter, Maddie, 12 years old, living with Grandpa Horace after Daria's marriage cracked and life got messy. Every summer, we visited Flagstaff. It was tradition, even when it felt tense, even when I could sense old ghosts living in the corners of that house. Because I kept telling myself something like a prayer. Grayson deserves to know his grandpa. Grayson deserves family. We arrived on Monday afternoon, 3 days before the incident. The 2-story white house with the wide porch stood among the tall pines like a fortress. Beautiful, solid, and somehow cold. When we pulled up, my father stepped onto the porch and his stern face broke into one of those rare smiles that always made me feel both hopeful and uneasy. Grayson jumped out with his Avengers backpack practically bouncing. And for a moment, just a moment, everything looked like the family I wished we were. Horace walked down the steps, lifted Grayson like he weighed nothing, hugged him tight, then spun him around until Grayson laughed that clear, bright laugh that can make you forget your worst fears. Nathan squeezed my hand like he was trying to anchor me in the good moment. Inside, Grayson asked softly, "Mom, where's Maddie?" Like she'd been summoned by the question, Maddie appeared at the top of the stairs. Messy hair, oversized t-shirt, eyes that looked older than 12. She stared at us like we'd interrupted something private. Then she nodded once, barely, and disappeared back into her room. The air in the house shifted. Horace exhaled like something heavy lived in his lungs. He leaned close to me and said quietly, "She's been with me 8 months. Daria and her husband. It's complicated." He said it like facts, like a report. No emotion, just the summary. Throughout that first afternoon, I watched Maddie from the corner of my eye, shoulders hunched, eyes down, the kind of posture kids wear when they've learned not to ask for too much. Grayson, being Grayson, tried anyway. He showed her his Pokemon cards, tried to invite her into a game, talked about school like he was offering pieces of himself as a bridge. Maddie barely responded. And every time she turned away, I saw the disappointment flicker across my son's face like a light trying to stay on. That night, the smell of grilled ribs filled the dining room, softening the edges of the tension. Horace wore his ridiculous barbecue king apron like he was trying to play normal. He asked Grayson about school, friends, games, actually listening. And when Grayson proudly told him he'd won first place in the science fair, my father's face lit up with something that almost looked like pride. He patted Grayson's shoulder and laughed loud. "That's my boy. Smart. Just like I was when I was young." I should have enjoyed it. But that's when I caught Maddie's eyes. There was a flash in them, sharp, raw, unguarded. Not just sadness, jealousy, the kind that makes your skin tighten because you recognize it, because you've seen what jealousy becomes in a house where love feels like a limited resource. Later, when Nathan and I were getting ready for bed, he whispered, "Delilah, I don't think Maddie's okay. The way she looks at Grayson, something's wrong." I tried to shrug it off because that's what I've always done with my family. Smooth it over, make it smaller. "She's going through a hard time," I said. "Her parents, the separation, she'll adjust." But even as I said it, something in my stomach stayed tight. Because Maddie's stare didn't feel like a phase. It felt like a warning I wasn't brave enough to name. 2 days passed. Things seemed better. And then, on the third morning, my phone buzzed with my boss's name. The second I heard his voice, I knew we were in trouble. "Delilah," he said, tight and urgent. "Bridge number 5 on the West Side project is showing serious settling signs. We need you back immediately." I ended the call and stared at my swollen ankle, bandaged from yesterday's hike with Grayson. I'd tripped over a hidden root. We'd laughed about it. Nathan had teased me for being stubborn. Now it didn't feel funny. Nathan stepped closer, eyes scanning my face. "We have to go," he said. "But you can't drive like this." "I know." My throat felt thick. Nathan hesitated. "Do we take Grayson?" I looked into the living room. Grayson and Maddie were on the rug, playing a video game. And for the first time since we arrived, Maddie was smiling. It wasn't big, it wasn't warm, but it was something. And Grayson looked thrilled, like he'd finally cracked the code to being accepted. I started calculating time. The drive to Phoenix, the emergency, the drive back. 6, maybe 7 hours. Too long for a 9-year-old to sit in a car, then wait at a dusty work site, then sit again. And Grayson, he'd finally found a connection here. So I turned to my father, who was reading the newspaper at the table like the world could never surprise him. "Dad," I said carefully, "work emergency. We have to go back to Phoenix for a few hours. Could you watch Grayson?" Horace lowered the paper and looked at me over his glasses. Calm, assured. "Of course," he said. "I'll take good care of the boy. Don't worry." Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they landed in my chest like a coin dropped into deep water. I knelt beside Grayson, explained we had to leave, asked if he wanted to stay with Grandpa and Maddie. His eyes lit up. "Really, Mom? I can stay?" I hugged him tight. "Be good." "I will," he said, already turning back to the game. "You'll be back before I even miss you." Nathan and I packed fast. As we pulled away, I saw Grayson in the window, waving, smiling, so sure he was safe. And I waved back, forcing my face into something calm. Because I had no idea that within 1 hour, Maddie would begin a plan she didn't fully understand. And 4 hours after that, I'd be driving back to a site that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The drive back felt longer than the one out, even though the road hadn't changed. Nathan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other clenched tight on his thigh. He hadn't said much since we left Phoenix, just short, clipped updates about the site being stabilized, the emergency handled. Done. Over. But the tension in the car didn't lift. It thickened. The Arizona sun was still brutal when we turned onto my father's street. The dashboard clock read 4:35 p.m. The thermometer blinked 95 degrees Fahrenheit like a warning we were already too late to heed. Something in my chest tightened the moment I saw the house. Not because it looked wrong, but because it looked quiet. Too quiet. No kids playing. No movement. Just stillness. When the car rolled to a stop, I saw him. Grayson, standing exactly where I'd waved goodbye. Only now his knees were trembling so badly they looked like they might fold. His head hung forward, chin resting against his chest like the weight of it was too much to carry. The old wooden chair, that chair, the one from my childhood punishments, sat beside him like an accomplice. My breath left my body in one sharp, broken sound. Nathan was out of the car first. "Delilah!" I see him. I don't remember opening the door. I just remember the ground rushing up toward me as I limped, every step sending pain through my ankle. Pain I welcomed because it meant I was still moving. Up close, it was worse. So much worse. Grayson's lips were cracked, peeling. His blonde hair was plastered to his forehead, dark with sweat. His eyes, normally so bright, were dull, glassy, barely able to focus. When he saw me, something flickered in them. Hope. Thin and fragile, like a candle about to go out. "Mom," he whispered. His voice broke me. Nathan dropped to his knees beside him, one hand hovering near Grayson's face, the other already reaching for his pulse. "He's overheating," Nathan said urgently. "Delilah, his skin is burning hot." I ripped the sign off his chest like it had insulted me personally, then fumbled at the knots around his wrists. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get a grip. "I've got it," Nathan said, fingers steady, trained. The rope fell away. The second it did, Grayson collapsed forward. I caught him. His small body felt limp in my arms, heavier than it should have, like his strength had leaked out into the heat. Across the street, I saw Mrs. Peterson and Mr. Roberts and his wife, people who had known my father for decades. Their faces weren't angry. They were horrified. Nathan pulled out his phone. "I'm calling 911. "Do it," I said, my voice coming out low and tight. "Now." As Nathan spoke calmly into the phone, address, symptoms, temperature estimates, I carried Grayson into the shade of the porch and lowered him onto the bench. I elevated his legs the way Nathan motioned, my mind clinging to instructions because if I stopped doing, I would fall apart. Grayson's eyes fluttered open again. "Mom," he whispered. "I'm here," I said, brushing his damp hair back. "I've got you." His fingers twitched weakly around mine. "I didn't do it," he said. "I didn't take Grandpa's money, I swear." That was when something inside me went cold. Not hot, not explosive, cold. Because there was only one person who could have decided this punishment was deserved. I carried Grayson inside as soon as Nathan said it was safe to move him. The cool air hit us like mercy. And there, exactly where he always sat, was my father. Horace Brennan reclined in his favorite chair, a steaming mug of coffee in his hand, as calm as if this were any other afternoon. He didn't stand, didn't rush over, didn't even look surprised. Nathan laid Grayson carefully on the couch and grabbed a cold towel from the kitchen, pressing it to Grayson's forehead with practiced care. He peeled off Grayson's soaked shirt, his jaw tightening when he saw the red marks around my son's wrists. I turned slowly to face my father. My voice didn't shake. "What did you do?" Horace took a sip of his coffee. "He stole from me," he said evenly. $60. The room tilted. "You left him outside," I said, "in that heat." "He needed to learn." Nathan looked up sharply. "His temperature is dangerously high. This is heat exhaustion, possibly worse." Horace waved a dismissive hand. "I raised 2 kids just fine." Something snapped inside my chest. "You tied him up," I said, stepping closer. "Do you have any idea what could have happened?" Horace set his mug down carefully, like he was preparing to deliver a lecture. "Discipline isn't supposed to be comfortable, Delilah." The words echoed. Nathan's phone beeped. "Ambulance is on the way," he said. 5 minutes. I swallowed hard and looked back at my father. "You're going to apologize to my son," I said. "Not a request, a demand." Horace finally looked at Grayson. My child lay there shaking, eyes half-lidded, chest rising too fast. My father's face didn't soften. "I won't apologize for doing what's right." That was the moment. Not when I saw my son tied up. Not when the neighbors stared. But that sentence. That was when I realized something fundamental had broken. I wasn't arguing with the man who made a mistake. I was standing in front of someone who believed pain was a teaching tool, and pride was more important than a child's life. The room filled with the sound of Grayson's shallow breathing and the ticking of the old wall clock. The same clock that had watched me grow up under this roof. I forced myself to breathe. "How did you find out?" I asked. "Tell me exactly." Horace straightened, slipping effortlessly into his old police chief tone. "This morning, I left my wallet on the kitchen table. When I returned, $60 was missing. I questioned both children separately. Maddie said she saw Grayson with my wallet. I searched his backpack. The money was there." Nathan froze. "So you didn't consider," I said carefully, "that Maddie might be lying?" Horace raised an eyebrow. "Maddie is my granddaughter. She doesn't lie." I stared at him. "And Grayson isn't?" Before he could answer, there was movement at the stairs. We all turned. Maddie stood there, pale, eyes red, hands shaking at her sides. She took one step forward, then another, and then she dropped to her knees in the middle of the living room. "It was me," she sobbed. "I took the money." The world went silent. "I put it in Grayson's backpack," she cried. I didn't know you'd do that." Horace didn't move, didn't speak. For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. But I also knew him well enough to understand. Uncertainty didn't mean regret. And it certainly didn't mean apology. For a moment after Maddie's confession, no one spoke. Not me, not Nathan, not even my father. The silence felt thick, heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Maddie stayed kneeling on the floor, shoulders shaking as if every sob was pulling something loose inside her chest. I just thought you'd yell," she cried, "or make him stand in the corner. I didn't think you'd tie him up. I didn't think—" Her words dissolved into broken gasps. Grayson stirred weakly on the couch. His eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding his face. Even after everything, he was trying to understand. "I didn't take it," he whispered again. "I told you." My heart clenched so hard it hurt to breathe. I turned to my father, waiting for remorse, waiting for shame, waiting for anything human. Horace finally stood. Slowly, deliberately. He looked down at Maddie, then at Grayson, then back at me. "Maddie will be punished," he said calmly, "but Grayson still needs to learn something from this." Nathan snapped. "Learn what? That adults can hurt him and never say sorry?" Horace's jaw tightened. "A child who cries when accused won't survive the real world." That sentence landed like a blade. The ambulance siren cut through the air outside, growing louder by the second. Nathan was already moving, grabbing the emergency bag from his car as paramedics rushed in. They assessed Grayson quickly. Oxygen, cold packs, IV fluids. One of them glanced at the marks on his wrists, then at me. I didn't need to hear the question out loud. Inside the ambulance, as they loaded my son onto the stretcher, Maddie stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the floor like she'd disappeared into herself. I looked at her then, not with anger, but with something heavier. Understanding. Because I had been her once. At the hospital, everything moved fast and slow at the same time. Monitors beeped. Fluids dripped. A doctor explained stage 2 heat exhaustion, dehydration, elevated temperature. Mandatory reporting. CPS would be notified. I nodded at every word. So did Nathan. There was no hesitation between us, because whatever consequences came next, they were nothing compared to losing our child. Grayson was kept overnight, tubes in his arm, sensors on his chest. His small body looked impossibly fragile against the oversized hospital bed. That night, while Nathan dozed in the chair beside me, Maddie's confession kept replaying in my head. The next morning, when CPS interviewed us, Maddie asked to speak to me alone. She sat in the hospital hallway, legs swinging nervously, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. I didn't hate him, she said suddenly, voice raw. Not at first. I stayed quiet, she swallowed. It started when he broke my car. The model? I asked. She nodded. The Dodge Charger. My dad gave it to me before he moved out. Grandpa said it was expensive and I had to keep it perfect. Her voice wavered. When it broke, I didn't even care about the car. I cared that it was another thing I lost. She looked up at me then, eyes shining. Grayson has you, and Nathan. You listen to him. You hug him. Grandpa smiles at him like he never smiles at me. My chest tightened. He tells me to be tough, she whispered, but Grayson gets to be a kid. That was when the truth settled in fully. Maddie didn't want Grayson punished. She wanted him to feel unwanted, to feel alone, to feel what she felt every day. That night, sitting beside my son's hospital bed, memories I hadn't touched in decades came rushing back. I was 10. I lied about finishing my homework, not because I didn't want to do it, but because I didn't understand it and was terrified to admit that. My father found out. He tied my hands. I am a liar. I am a liar. 2 hours in the sun. I remembered the burning ground through my shoes, the dizziness, the fear that he wouldn't let me back inside. A year later, it was my sister Daria. Different offense, same punishment. And my mother, God, my mother watching from the window, crying silently because she was too afraid to intervene. I'd sworn when Grayson was born that this would end with me. I whispered it again that night, holding my son's hand as he slept. It ends here. The CPS investigation moved quickly. We returned to Phoenix once Grayson was stable. Therapy started. Nightmares followed. Then, slowly, progress. Nathan never left my side. But the fallout didn't stay quiet. Within weeks, my father stopped calling. Then my sister did too. And then, unexpectedly, Nathan's ex-girlfriend, Sloane, resurfaced, checking in, offering sympathy that felt rehearsed. I learned later she'd been talking, framing the story neatly, respectably, making me the overreacting daughter, making Nathan the controlled boyfriend, making Horace the misunderstood disciplinarian. That was when I understood something else. This wasn't just about one afternoon. It was about legacy, and legacies don't break quietly. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Plain white envelope, Arizona state seal in the corner. I stared at it for a long time before opening it, like it might explode if I moved too fast. Nathan stood behind me in the kitchen, close enough that I could feel his breath on my shoulder. Grayson was in the living room, building a Lego tower with quiet concentration, still careful, still cautious, like the world might punish him for making too much noise. My hands trembled as I slid the paper out. CPS investigation results. The words blurred for a moment. I sat down at the table as I read. The conclusion was clinical, precise, cold. Corporal punishment exceeding reasonable limits. Mandatory child development training, 24 hours. Prohibition from supervising children under 12 without another approved adult present for 12 months. Protection order approved. No contact with Grayson for 1 year. No criminal charges. But my father's name would remain flagged. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Relief came first, then grief. Because even though I knew this was right, even though I'd chosen this path with clear eyes, it still felt like reading an obituary. Nathan knelt beside me, reading over my shoulder. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He just said quietly, "You protected your son." I nodded, but my throat burned. That afternoon, Grayson had therapy. While he was gone, I walked through the house, touching familiar things. The couch, the hallway mirror, the family photo on the wall from years ago. All of us smiling under the Arizona sun. A picture that lied. By the end of the week, the consequences spread outward like cracks in glass. My father didn't respond to the notice. Not anger, not apology. Silence. My sister Daria didn't call either, but someone else did. It started with whispers, then sideways looks, then a message forwarded to me by a friend. A post, carefully worded, no names. But the story was unmistakable. A retired officer, a misunderstood punishment, a daughter overreacting, a child never in real danger. The source? Sloan, Nathan's ex-girlfriend. She worked in community outreach. Knew people. Knew how to make a narrative sound responsible, compassionate, believable. She never contacted me directly. She didn't have to. Her version traveled faster without confrontation. Nathan was furious when he found out. I shut this down, he said, already typing. I stopped him. No, let it burn out. Because I knew something they didn't. Truth doesn't need defending forever. It just needs time. 2 weeks later, the doorbell rang at 9:04 p.m. I checked the security camera. My stomach dropped. Daria stood on the porch. Full uniform, straight posture, jaw tight. I told Nathan to stay with Grayson. Then I opened the door. She didn't hug me. Didn't step inside. She stood there like she was about to read me my rights. You humiliated Dad, she said without preamble. I felt something inside me harden. I protected my son. You destroyed his reputation, she snapped. 35 years of service, gone because you couldn't handle how we were raised. I stared at her. We weren't raised, I said quietly. We were trained. Her eyes flashed. And we turned out fine. No, I said, we turned out afraid. That did it? Her voice rose. She accused me of weakness, of betrayal, of turning Grayson into a fragile child who wouldn't survive the world. When I mentioned the ropes, my ropes, her face went red. You don't get to rewrite history, she said. Dad made us strong. I shook my head. Dad made us silent. She looked past me then, toward the hallway. Is he even asking about Grandpa? She asked. The answer was no, and she knew it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grayson standing in the sun again, knees shaking, sign hanging from his chest, eyes searching for me. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went to sit on the living room floor, my back against the couch. The house was quiet in that way that only exists when you've lost something and the world doesn't care. Nathan joined me without a word. He handed me a glass of water, then another for himself. I'm sorry, he said finally. Not like he'd done something wrong, just the kind of sorry you say when there's nothing you can fix. I knew this would happen, I said. I just didn't know how much it would hurt. He leaned his head back against the couch. You didn't choose conflict. They forced it. I thought about Daria's words. You chose. She was right about one thing. I had. The weeks that followed were quieter, but heavier. Grayson's therapy sessions became a routine. Every Tuesday afternoon. The first few times, he barely spoke. He drew pictures instead. Houses with no doors, people with no faces, suns colored black. The therapist told us it was normal. Trauma doesn't announce itself. It leaks. Sometimes Grayson woke up crying. Sometimes he flinched when someone raised their voice on TV. Once, at the grocery store, a security guard smiled at him, and Grayson froze like his feet were glued to the floor. Nathan knelt beside him, calm and patient, until Grayson could breathe again. I watched that moment and knew, without a doubt, that I had chosen the right partner to stand beside me in this. Meanwhile, the rest of my family faded. My father never called, never wrote, not once. Through Mrs. Peterson, I heard he attended the mandatory training. Sat in the back, arms crossed, silent. No apologies, no reflection. Just endurance. Daria cut contact completely. Blood apparently had conditions. 3 months later, CPS officially closed the case. The protection order remained active. That night, Nathan and I sat at the kitchen table with the paperwork between us. Do you regret it? He asked gently. I thought about the family photo still hanging on our wall, the one where everyone looked happy, unaware of the cracks beneath their smiles. I took it down the next day. No, I said, I grieve it, but I don't regret it. A year passed. Grayson got better. Not all at once, not magically, but steadily. He started soccer again, made new friends, laughed louder, asked fewer questions about Grandpa. The nightmares came less often. Sometimes late at night, I'd hear him talking in his sleep, not screaming, just murmuring. And every time, I'd sit beside his bed until his breathing evened out again. Because that's what protection looks like. It's not loud. It's consistent. One afternoon, nearly 15 months after that summer, Grayson asked me something while we were sitting on the porch. Mom? Yeah, baby? Did I do something wrong that day? My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. No, I said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. Ever. He nodded, absorbing it slowly, like he was testing whether the words were safe to believe. Then he smiled, a real one. That was my answer. I don't know how my father is living now. I don't know if Daria ever questions her certainty. I don't know if Maddie understands yet that she was a child shaped by neglect, not a villain. What I do know is this. I will never trade my son's safety for peace built on fear. I will never teach him that love hurts. And if that means my family tree lost a few branches, then I'll grow something better in its place. So I'll ask you what I've asked myself 1,000 times. Was my father's punishment too harsh? And was cutting that final family thread cruel? Or was it the only way to end a cycle that should have stopped generations ago? I know my answer. Now I'd like to hear yours. Completed. Continue epilogue. The silence after. 6 months after everything was supposed to be over, the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something in my chest tightened, the same instinct that had screamed at me the day I drove away from Flagstaff. So I picked up. Delilah, a voice said. Older, rougher, stripped of authority. It was my father. I didn't speak. I waited. I heard Grayson's doing better, Horace said. No greeting, no apology, just a statement, like weather. He is, I replied. Silence stretched between us, heavy and familiar. I completed the classes, he said finally. Child development, psychology. A pause. They say kids need more than discipline. I closed my eyes. Too late, I thought, but I didn't say it. I'm not calling to argue, he continued, or to ask for forgiveness. Another pause, longer this time. I just wanted you to know. I didn't know it would go that far. My grip tightened on the phone. That's the problem, I said quietly. You never thought it would. He didn't answer. And in that silence, I realized something painful and freeing all at once. Even now, even after everything, he still couldn't say the word sorry. Not to me, not to Grayson. So I said the only thing left to say. Take care of yourself, I told him. Then I hung up. That night, Grayson showed me a drawing he'd made at school. It was a house, with doors, with windows, with a bright yellow sun in the corner. Who lives there? I asked. He smiled. Us. And that was it. No courtroom drama, no reconciliation montage, no final apology that tied everything into a neat bow. Just a quiet truth. Some cycles don't end with forgiveness. They end with boundaries. And sometimes that's the bravest ending of all. Her shoulders stiffened. You chose, she said, and you chose wrong. Then she turned and walked away. Just like that. The door closed behind her with a soft click, but something inside me tore loudly. That night, I sat beside Grayson's bed long after he fell asleep. I watched his chest rise and fall, steady and safe. And for the first time since this began, I didn't question myself. Because whatever family I lost,